It's fair to say we will never doubt Tyson Fury again after his stunning victory over Deontay Wilder at the weekend. This is After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show in association with Betfair.
Hey, it's the WBA heavyweight champion of the world.
Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
The Mirror brings you After the Bell in association with Betfair.
Welcome to this week's After the Bell. We are, of course, reflecting on Tyson Fury's stunning victory over Deontay Wilder in Las Vegas on Saturday night. He dropped the champion twice in the third and fifth rounds before the fight was stopped in the seventh. Tyson Fury, world champion again, and, of course, definitely the best heavyweight in the world. I'm joined by George Groves and by my colleague Rich Jones to take a look back and also to look forward to what's coming up in the heavyweight division for the rest of the year. George, nobody, I don't think, actually believed Tyson Fury when he said, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to be aggressive, take the fight to Wilder and stop him. We thought he was just bluffing us as usual, but he wasn't. He did what he said he was going to do and presumably got his tactics spot on.
Yeah, he definitely got his tactics spot on. Great performance from Fury. And for a chap his size, 6'9", I think, 19.5 stone, is now fighting as an aggressive counterpuncher, pushing guys back off the front foot. It was something that I personally didn't think he could do because I wonder why he hadn't done it up until this stage in his career. But now that we are seeing this type of Tyson Fury, he's just going to be so difficult to beat. He was such a huge presence, I felt, in front of Wilder that night that Wilder just couldn't breathe. Like, you're getting swarmed by such a big presence, such a big figure in front of you, and that's daunting, that's draining, and it was almost punch perfect for Fury. You couldn't sing him any more praise.
Rich, do you think it's easy to say now, looking back, that's how you beat Wilder? He's had 40 odd fights, 10 defences, he's always had that right hand. It's easy to say, oh, of course, why has no one done that before? But presumably Fury being 273 pounds, 6'9", he was the perfect specimen almost to go in and do what he did.
Yeah, exactly that. I think when they hit the scales for the weigh-in, obviously Wilder came in heavier, but Fury also was, as heavy as he's been, I think, apart from his first comeback fight. And I think a lot of people looked at that and thought, is he gone a bit too heavy? I know he was too light for the Wallin fight. He said that himself. But yeah, like you say, he came in and he just completely overpowered him from the first bell. I think as soon as the bell went for the opening round, he came straight out, walked straight into him, hit him with a big jab. And I think from that very first punch, it set the tone for the rest of the fight, really. And I think, like George said, I think everyone was expecting if Fury was to win, it was going to be a case of him sort of outboxing Wilder, dancing around him for 12 rounds. And I definitely didn't think he had it in him to just go out there and overpower him the way he did and just completely dominate him. He, like George said, it was pretty much punch perfect. I don't think he lost barely a second of the fight. He was in control from that first bell when he came out to the last. And physically he got the weight spot on this time, I think. And that was, like you say, he was too much of a specimen for Wilder to compete with, really.
It's okay for us to not believe Fury and sort of not think he's going to do what he did, but surely Wilder should have taken into account all possibilities, shouldn't he? He should have thought, well, what if he does come out aggressive? Did he miss a trick?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, to Wilder's sort of defence, we've never seen this from Fury, and as I say, he throws out a lot of information, so you're not necessarily sure what's real, what's not. I mean, it would be a master plan if he told everyone he was going to box on the front foot and then box on the back foot, There was a change of trainer working with Stuart out in America, Andy Lee now involved in the camp as well. Was he going to adopt that Kronk style, And but as I say, yes, he was. He's a big, forceful front foot counter puncher, and for someone like Wilder, his power was always going to come with guys who are maybe a touch shorter than him, or guys that sort of are slower and creep into range. But Fury sees the shots much quicker than most heavyweights out there, so he has a better boxing brain, where it's a clearer, sharper defensive frame of mind. So he can press on the front foot, knowing that he has the reaction time to maybe slip and slide and get out of the way of them big shots that are coming back, even at 6'9". So Wilder came in heavy, as we said, himself, which probably didn't really do him any favours, because he could have done with being a little bit more agile, as opposed to being heavier, where he might have a bit more force and a bit more power on his shots, but it's going to be that much difficult for him to evade shots. I thought this fight would be won on weight. And when I saw that they both came in heavy, I wanted Wilder to come in a bit heavier for his sake in terms of their first fight. But Fury coming in that heavy, there's always an element with heavyweights that you wonder, have they forgot about the conditioning? Have they missed out on the runs? And has they worked on their stamina, or have they literally just been working on being a big, strong type of guy, and therefore they're going to lose punch, hand speed. They might lose a bit of foot speed, and they might gas out. But Fury coming in heavy was definitely in great shape as well. I felt he wasn't blowing at all. Hurt Wilder, and then from the third round onwards, I'd say that he never really recovered. And then he was the one that was breathing heavy Wilder, which would have been maybe from coming in a bit heavier, but also obviously from being under the pressure from Fury and taking the shots, the heavy shots from Fury.
Yeah, I think as well. Sorry, I think Wilder he came in a bit heavier. Obviously, he was thinking, to win this fight, I'm going to have to knock him out, and I'm going to have to keep him knocked out this time after what happened in round 12 of the first fight. I think, I can't remember if it was second or third round. Quite early on, Wilder connected with a decent enough overhand right on Fury, and Fury just walked straight through it. It wasn't a perfect shot, but it was the sort of shot that I think you saw when he hit him with it. Wilder was thinking he landed a decent shot and just did nothing to Fury. And I think that, again, like the early rounds, it became clear so early on that the effect the weight was going to have. Wilder was not able to compete with Fury was just walking into him, and he was walking through his shot. And I think that early on, Wilder you could see that it was just all the pieces were in place for Fury to dominate the fight, and you could see that early on with Fury coming out and hitting that first big jab, and then walking straight through a decent enough right hand from Wilder as well.
Yeah, a couple of talking points obviously come out of the fight, result aside. One of which was the stoppage. Tell came in from Mark Breland in Wilder's corner. I suspect the fight would have been stopped pretty quickly afterwards had he not done that. Jay Diaz, Wilder's main trainer, has come out and said he disagreed with it, which is sort of gives an insight into how that corner works. And Wilder now, even after some time, has come out and said, no, it should never have happened. I want to die in the ring if that's what it takes. I think we all understand that all fighters don't want that to happen, right? The whole point, you want to go in there and you want to be in there until you cannot fight anymore. But surely the point of the trainer is to be a bit more, to take a step back and to look after the health. In your opinion, George, was that the right thing to do?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because as I say, I don't think he really recovered from the third round. He was bleeding out of his left ear, which you're not exactly sure what is that at the time. It might just be a cut on the ear that's bleeding, or it might be something else. He looked off balance. He didn't, when your balance isn't there for a guy like Wilder, there's not much left, because he needs to have his feet underneath him to land them big shots, them power shots that are going to change the fight and his momentum. He's not the sort of fighter who, he's not a Nigel Benn, or where he's in trouble and then he just gets loose and then generates some mad power. He needs to set you up with 9 times out of 10, stand you still with a jab, and then the right hand comes over the top. I felt that he got, even in the 5th round, he gets dropped with a body shot, and it's not where he's been hit with a body shot and he can't breathe and he's gone down. He's almost like hit and the force has bundled him over because his legs weren't under him. I think it was definitely the right decision. I'm glad the corner threw in the towel, because it's not always up to the referee, or definitely never up to the fighter to pull himself out of a fight, because the fighter would never want to do that. So I think it was a great call from the corner. I'm glad it came in then. I think he was never going to change the momentum of the fight, and it was probably just going to take more punches that would have been unnecessary.
You mentioned obviously the shaky legs. Wilder's come out even 2 days later and said that was down to his 3-stone costume that he wore into the ring. Quite an extravagant ring walk, which he's known for. As excuses go, Rich, it's up there.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. And I mean, I'm just shocked that he's come out and said it all this time after the fight. I mean, I think, fighters say things in the heat of the moment after a fight that they maybe regret when, the adrenaline's pumping and they're struggling to accept what's happening there. But, to come out when he's had a day or two to consider everything that's happened, presumably rewatch some of the fight, and to, even if he thinks it, he must surely have realised what he's letting himself in for, blaming the costume. It's always going to be, he's always going to get some stick for that one, I think. And, I mean, he must have known what the costume was like before he went out and wore it for the ring walk, surely.
Do you think, George, it's a case of, I've got to think of something? I can't just come out and say, Fury was so much better than me. He needs to basically convince himself, if not us, that he's still basically got a chance in the third fight.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, publicly he's not going to do himself any favours with using that as necessarily an excuse, but it might be something to hang on to for himself, for his team, if they do trigger the rematch clause and they want to go into camp with it. If the costume was as heavy as he says it was, which I definitely believe, then that's a silly idea. Why did someone let him do that? I'm all in favour of elaborate ring walks. I used to try and rack my brain to try and think of something for myself, but never that would be detrimental to the performance, to the fight. So a bit bizarre, a hard lesson to learn. But even costume or no costume, I don't think it would have made a huge difference on the outcome of the fight. So, but maybe, who knows? Enough people talk about it, who knows? You can recreate history sometimes. He's not in the driver's seat in terms of the statements they're getting picked up. But, I don't know. I'd left it.
Of course, Fury's stock has risen hugely. Do we have to reevaluate just how good Wilder is after this? Is he... I mean, we always talked about his technique not being the best. He had that right hand he could always rely on. Is that all he has?
No, I don't think so. You don't get, the record he's got and to have the belt for as long as he did without being a good fighter in yourself. And I always... I never liked it when a fight would have a good win and then you're sort of poking questions at the guy you beat, when before then, there was no question. So the heavyweight division especially, which has so much spotlight on it, feels like it keeps changing. Who's the number one, who's not? But I think Wilder's definitely a very good fighter. Technically, good, has a lot of things that would be maybe his downfall, things that he possibly needs to work on, but his ring craftsmanship is very good. His punch technique is, although it can look wild because he's got such long limbs, when he generates the power, it's hard to compete with. So technically, his punching is very good, and he's a showman. He's an entertainer. I've enjoyed him. I hope he this isn't the end of him, and maybe he gets. I don't think he should go straight back in with a Fury rematch. I think he should have a couple of fights to rebuild, but. Maybe he'll learn from it. Maybe we'll see something new.
Of course, the pound-for-pound list is very much mythical and very much subject to debate, but we have to start considering Fury, don't we, Rich? I mean, he's won, obviously, become world champion twice, ended 2 reigns of 10-plus defences in Klitschko, and now in Wilder. Can't ask much more.
Yeah, 100%. I think, from my point of view, this fight answered... If there are any questions left about Fury, it certainly answered them. I think in terms of the previous question on Wilder, I think I don't think the opinion of Wilder's really changed too much. I think he is what we always sort of said he was, a really big puncher who's a good boxer. But then the way Fury took him apart, just for me, was more a case of Fury just being incredibly good rather than Wilder being worse than expected. I think, like you said, the Klitschko performance was one of the best British performances we've ever seen, sort of on away soil, going into Germany and ending Klitschko's reign, and then everything he's been through to put on all that weight. He did go through all those dark times, and to come back and then still be in a position where he goes in and ends Wilder's reign, not just ends his reign, to absolutely dominate that fight like he did. I think you've got to put him right up there with the pound for pound lists at the moment. Obviously he's a big guy, but he's done the way he's won his fights as well. Now he's done it every sort of way. Like when he fought against Klitschko, he obviously boxed around him, sort of did the smart work, kept out of his way, and then he's gone in against Wilder and just blown him away. I mean, he's beat people so many different ways. He's done exactly what he said he would. I think, could you name many boxers at the moment in the world that you'd say are better than him at the moment? Probably not many, if any at all, really.
His record, it's not the best. It's quite padded at times, but when he's needed to, his 2 biggest fights, he's absolutely
I kind of disagree. I wouldn't put him in the high up on the pound for pound yet, because sure, he's rose to the occasion, but for me, a pound for pound fighter needs to be who's continually perform, and he has looked flat at times. He has boxed, he's not like a Canelo or a Lomachenko, always been have built up that bank of high profile fights against seasoned champions. But you're right, definitely going to Germany, beating Klitschko when no one really thought he would do it. is a standout performance from a British fighter, and then Saturday night is a standout performance. Definitely a standout performance. You know, he needs to definitely rack up a few more wins. I think if obviously with the one that everyone's talking about, if the Joshua fight can get made, or even if it's just another highly ranked contender, a few more wins, and then for me, I'd start talking maybe putting him in a pound for pound list. But yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Well, next up, we'll take a look at what is indeed next for Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So this might be the easiest piece of matchmaking we've done on the show. It looks like Deontay Wilder will indeed trigger the rematch clause to take on Tyson Fury for a third time. The fight is contracted to take place before or on July 18th, although there has been talk that it will be pushed back into the autumn and take place at the new Raider Stadium in Las Vegas. I don't think Wilder's officially said, or not officially triggered it, George, but it looks like he will. The right thing to do, you said earlier, actually you'd rather he took a couple of warm-up fights first.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world for him, he definitely should have a rebuilding phase. He should have a camp where it's not as intense, because obviously the build-up for, you know, a world title fight against someone like Tyson Fury is going to be, you're going to have to parade around, you're going to have to expend a lot of energy, and really right now he should be focusing on the rebuild phase of his career, of his first loss, something that he's going to struggle to process. But commercially and in terms of business as well, if he doesn't trigger that rematch clause, he might get frozen out of a world title fight for a significant amount of time, and no one wants that. It's almost like you got to be a really brave fighter to make that decision. So I understand if he does that, but unless he believes that something significantly wrong happened in his camp and he can make those change adjustments instantly, I'd imagine that I'll be looking to make some sort of deal where, you know, it's not immediate. Let's give it a couple of fights, maybe leave a bit of time before it can get built up. But he might be worried that, you know, if he don't fight the Fury, then Fury goes and fights Joshua, or he fights someone else, and then he just won't get back in the picture. I think everyone's on such a high from the weekend. There's a lot of people talking about these two fighters, but to get that excited about watching that fight again when you feel like it was so one-sided and dominant, who knows? You know, it'd be better to have just to see Wilder knocking someone out first, and then hearing about that fight can take place, and Wilder's changed this, and this is different, and this is the reason why I can win a rematch. But at the moment, I just genuinely wouldn't see how he could do that, and then therefore, how would they sell it?
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, Rich. I mean, you look at someone like Dillian White, who's waited forever for a shot at Wilder's former title, now Fury's. If Wilder doesn't fight Fury next, it's very difficult to see who he fights, who he gets up for, and he has to then wait for mandatory after mandatory after mandatory to then get his shot, not to mention the fact he's probably going to get another $30-40 million if he does it again in the summer.
Yeah, I think in some ways it reminds me a bit of the Anthony Joshua situation when he lost to Andy Ruiz Jr., where Eddie Hearn was like, well, you know, everyone said he should have a couple of tune-up fights, and Eddie Hearn said multiple times, he was like, well, look, where does Anthony Joshua go if he doesn't go straight into a world title fight? You know, he's not going to go to sort of a smaller tune-up fight like a 6-rounder or a 10-rounder in you know, a smaller venue just because of his stock. And I think in terms of Wilder, in terms of the actual fight, I agree with George. I don't see... There was nothing on Saturday to indicate that within 3 or 4 months, Deontay Wilder's going to find the key to putting in a different performance and overcoming Tyson Fury if Tyson Fury boxes like that. But at the same time, in the sort of political side of things, I think he's got to exercise the rematch clause because, you know, if he has another loss to Fury on his record, it's not great. But in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not going to affect his stock too much in terms of, if he loses to Fury again, he's still likely to come back in and have the same opportunity as he would if he didn't take the rematch clause. Whereas the way Wilder fights with that, you know, with that big power, he's always going to hold that hope that, you know, he could land a punch, could win the rematch. And if he wasn't to take the rematch now, and Fury beats Joshua and becomes the undisputed champion, hypothetically, then what's Fury got to gain from going back and fighting Wilder again? He's much more likely to, you know, try and add some of the names to his record, or take some of the fights, or even move on to something else. So I think like you say, from Wilder's point of view, he's not really got that much choice than to exercise the rematch clause. He's got the chance because of the contract. He'll make a lot of money from it, and if he wins, he's got his world title back in 3-4 months after losing it. And if he loses, it's probably not going to affect his position in the grander scheme of things too much. So I think from his point of view, I personally at this stage can't see him winning the rematch, but I think he's got to exercise the clause, to be honest.
Tyson Fury is indeed the favourite for a third fight, 4-11 with Betfair, Wilder 15-8. If you look at the two fights they've had, George, obviously Fury won all 6.5 rounds on Saturday. But even if you go back to 2018, although it was officially a draw, most people think he won most of the rounds. So actually, when you look at we've got 18 completed rounds, Wilder's won a handful, right? So we're going into a third fight where he's really been second best for 18 rounds. What can he do? Let's assume he takes rematch. What should he do, knowing now that Fury can win both ways, right? He can outbox him, or he can take the fight to him. You wouldn't want to be Wilder right now, would you?
No, I mean, you wouldn't want to be just off the back of your first loss and just coming in that manner against someone like Tyson Fury, who's coming 30 pound heavier. He's a big guy. Yeah, I don't really see Fury changing back to that previous style. I feel that maybe this is now genuine confidence. He's in a good place. He's talked a lot about depression and that before, and about how he felt he's not. He's never got the rub of the green, and but now people are genuinely behind him. So he'll be in a good place. It's very difficult, I'd imagine, to get straight up for a rematch against someone who you've just beaten so easily, but someone who's also very dangerous. So you can't be switched off, because they could knock someone out, in a fraction of a second. But Fury's been speaking about fighting Wilder he was even before Saturday night, triggering a rematch clause. So I think in his head he believes it's going to happen. He's probably been told, look, this is going to happen. The dates have been set and venue's been found, as you say, but nothing's been announced yet. I'm not sure what Wilder would do different, whether he would just try and be a little bit more nimble and just find a home for that right hand.
Not wear the costume for the ring walk, I imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely...
We do have to think about Fury. I mean, he's obviously insists that he's in a good place, and hopefully he very much is. But the last time he became world champion, it went badly wrong. Although I think the public perception of him now is so much different to it was back in 2015. But you're right, he still has to, for the next 6 months or so, stay focused on a fight that he has won at least once.
Yeah, he can't lose the plot. Definitely not. He's he can't let it all go to his head. He's still got. As I feel like this is the best Fury we've seen. I feel he needs to now build upon this. He's a maverick. He's done things his own way. Sometimes it seems like he's done things the hard way. He makes bizarre decisions that you can't say haven't worked for him. He's chopped and changed trainers. He's changed camps. He's took the difficult fights. He's gone missing before. He's made mistakes, but he's now in a very good position, the best position he's ever been in his career. He just needs to essentially just not lose the plot, just stay not humble or grounded or anything like that, but remain focused and train hard to get the very best out of himself, because there might be more. We might see something better. We might. I don't think he could do much better than Saturday night against Wilder. But if that rematch clause is triggered and that fight has to take place, then he definitely 100% can't do any worse. He has to be switched on to go out and do the exact same job. Otherwise, he's going to end up coming out worse off than where he's at now. Yeah. So that's a difficult situation for him.
Of course, in the hours after Fury's win, Eddie Hearn was very vocal about the prospect of him taking on Anthony Joshua next. But now this rematch, and of course Joshua's impending fight with Kubrat Pulev, has put an end to that for now. It interests me that Eddie Hearn was so vocal about it when he had the chance to meet Joshua Wilder. For whatever reason, that never happened. Now he seems desperate to get this undisputed fight, but I think we're going to have to wait. The fight is with Betfair. It's odds on not to happen this year. We've talked about this before, George, and we talked about the venue as well. Would you rather see Fury Joshua now? I'm assuming you would. When are we next going to have the two Brits with all the belts? Is that really, in an ideal world, that's a fight we'd make for summer at Wembley?
Yeah. So that's summer Wembley. Unless they can find a venue in the UK that's bigger than Wembley, it's Wembley. I heard Frank Warren on the radio say that it would be the biggest sporting occasion in England since '66 World Cup. And the first thing I was like, really? And then I thought about it and I thought, wow, it's two British heavyweights for all the belts. Has it ever happened? Will it ever happen again? Does it need to happen now? Or do we run the risk of it not happening? It needs to be in the UK. And I believe it will be if the fight takes place because of Tyson Fury. He will want that. Like, he will want. I think he knows that even if there's more money to be earned elsewhere, he'll know that there's enough money in the UK that it's worth its while to be here, to have all the other amazing things that will come with winning such a huge event, huge fight in the UK in front of British fans that will be streamed all over the world. I feel now that Fury's won, I feel that stands a much greater chance of it being in the UK, a fight for all the belts that we all want to see against two Brits, which is just, it's amazing. It's in the heavyweight division when the heavyweight division is exciting right now. Everyone's probably saying that Fury wins that fight easy at the moment, but if the fight gets made as it trickles along and everyone has an opinion, then no doubt it'd be a 50-50 fight come fight night, and you struggle to find anything better.
So both London and Saudi Arabia are 10-11 with Betfair. Of course, Saudi Arabia big on boxing at the moment. They want to take the biggest fights. And I understand, obviously, Eddie Hearn's point of view. How do you go to a fighter and say, I can give you, let's call it 100 million to fight in London or 200 million to fight in Saudi Arabia? I get that, but it's got to be in London, hasn't it, Rich?
You'd like to think so. I mean, like to say, it's two British heavyweights. It'd be such a huge occasion in the UK. And I think, it's like you say, it's got to be. It's just the obvious choice. I mean, you would, you might be able to offer the fighters more money maybe to go to Saudi Arabia hypothetically, but I think it's everything that comes with the fight being in the UK. It would just be, the event would just be so much bigger in terms of the whole occasion if it was in the UK, and that obviously adds in, all the extra exposure you get in terms of, like sponsorship and the all the other revenue streams that you get from that. So, I'd like to think that when it comes down to it, a fight like that will be in the UK. I mean, it's different when you've got, say, Joshua Ruiz, you've got a Brit against a sort of Mexican-American. It's quite easy to then take it to a neutral site. Likewise with Fury going to America to fight Wilder, an American, but when you've got two Brits especially, it's just logical that it's going to end up in the UK, you'd like to think.
Fury's the 4-9 favourite with Betfair to beat Joshua, who is 13-8. If the fight was to happen next weekend, obviously it can't, but if it was to happen next weekend, given what we know now, how do you see it going?
I think Fury beats him. I think he'll look to probably even box him on the front foot, Joshua. I think anyone who wants to sort of try and stick a move with Joshua, they're going to struggle. Joseph Parker struggled with that. Fury, I'm not sure about the reach, but I think he is slightly taller as well. So that's something that both men have got to contend with. But he's coming right off the back of fighting Wilder, who's 6'6" maybe, is he? Or he's a big guy. So I make Fury the favourite in that fight. I think he beats Joshua.
It would be strange for Joshua, I guess, to be the underdog in that fight, which perhaps that might suit him.
Yeah, I think it could do. I think it's going to be interesting as well to see what we get from Joshua when he fights Pulev. I mean, obviously he got beat by he had that first defeat to Ruiz, and then when it came to the rematch, he had to really go back to the drawing board, and he went into that second fight with a really different approach. He boxed behind the jab and stuff like that. So it'd be quite interesting to see what we get from Joshua when we next see him in the ring. And I think the next sight we get of Joshua will give us a much better idea what to expect from him moving forwards, to see if that defeat has sort of changed him as a fighter slightly. I think the big thing, if he was to fight Fury, is obviously it's one thing for Fury to to go and walk down Wilder, who was always a lot smaller than him. I think he weighed in 3 stone lighter. He's tall, but he's always been sort of quite a slight build. Obviously, Joshua's a much bigger guy, and it's a case of can Fury would Fury be able to just walk him down like he did with Wilder, or would Joshua be able to sort of stand up to it, come back, and they go toe to toe sort of thing? I think at the moment you would have to make Fury the favourite. But yeah, I'm interested to see what we see from Joshua next time we see him in the ring. And if Joshua Fury does eventually get made, I think the build-up's going to be absolutely huge. Like George said, everyone's going to have an opinion on it, and it's one of those that you can. It's going to be easy to make arguments either way, really, isn't it? Because both men have had their ups and their downs in the last few years. So yeah, it'll be such a huge occasion. It'll be interesting to see how the odds are when it comes to that fight, if it eventually takes place.
Well, hopefully that will be one we preview in the months to come. Next up, we'll take a look ahead to this weekend's action in America. So this weekend in Texas, a packed matchroom card. We're going to focus on Cal Yafai's defence of his super flyweight title against Roman Gonzalez. If I'd asked you beforehand, George, and you didn't know this fight was happening, who our longest reigning world champion was, would you have said Cal Yafai?
Probably not. I might have to guess that it would be someone I wouldn't think of, but I was shocked when I look, and he's had quite a few defences, Cal Yafai, a few on the road, and maybe that's why they've gone under the radar a bit. That's the problem with that weight division, and it happens, and he's on the road again this weekend. So great fight. I've known Cal Yafai since he was maybe 16, or maybe a year older than him. We was cadet level together. We went around the world together and boxed in multi-nation tournaments, and then he got on the podium team to fight and qualify for the Beijing Games, and you always knew that he was a good talent back then, very good, well-schooled fighter, come out of a great gym in Birmingham, and it felt like it took him a little while to get going in the pros, maybe just a while to get an opportunity to fight for a world title. But now you look at him, he's 26-0 now with a world title, longest reigning British world champion, and it's a shame, it's a real shame that we don't hear more of him, see more of him, because he is a great talent.
And I guess, as George said, Rich, there's several problems. The smaller weight divisions, rightly or wrongly, don't get the same coverage. His fights tend to go the distance. As good as he is skillfully, he's not necessarily knocking people out. His defences have been low-key, and they've been on the road. But this, surely, against Roman Gonzalez, who at one point was sort of considered top 2 pound for pound, along with Floyd Mayweather, surely this fight, obviously if he wins, could be his coming out party.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a massive fight. I think, like you say, Roman Gonzalez, as far as, the bigger names go in that division, he's right up there. I mean, like you said, that lower weight classes maybe don't get the recognition, but, if he can go in there and beat Roman Gonzalez, who is, like you say, a fairly big name in that division, then, go a long way to hopefully getting him some more recognition. I think there's, you'd like to think there's some decent opportunities for him now, especially, Charlie Edwards vacated his world title, didn't he? The weight below flyweight. He's looking to move up. That's an obvious chance for Cal Yafai to sort of possibly get a bigger, fight that on a British market would maybe get a bit more interest. Charlie Edwards got a decent enough profile for that weight class. So a huge fight for him at the weekend against Roman Gonzalez. But if he can come through that with a win and make it another defence of his belt, he's surely got to be getting the recognition and looking for his next big fight to hopefully be in the UK to try and take advantage of that stock.
And Gonzalez only 32, 2 defeats, both to Srai Rungvisai. Plenty left. You would imagine there's still plenty left from him.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure on the odds, but I think for me, Yafai's probably the favourite as a defending champion. But
he is 8-11 with Betfair, and Gonzalez 11-10.
Yeah, I think that's quite good value for Gonzalez, to be honest. I mean, like you say, he had those 2 defeats against Saul Ringvisai, but yeah, he's got a really good track record. Like you say, was considered one of the top pound for pound fighters at one stage, and should have plenty left in the tank. No doubt he'll be going in with a point to prove. And I think Calify didn't look at his best in his last defence. He went the distance to fight that. I think he was looking for a stoppage in. He didn't look at his sharpest in his last fight. He's had quite a few sort of hand problems and injuries and stuff like that. So for me, Roman Gonzalez would be good value, but obviously from a British perspective, hoping to see Calify come through and have another successful defence.
That card is headlined by Mikey Garcia against Jesse Vargas, while Jay Harris gets his shot at Julio Cesar Martinez, who fought to a no contest with Charlie Edwards last year, but essentially was well on his way to winning before VAR stepped in at the end. That is all for this week. Please do, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and give us a like. If indeed you do, of course, enjoy the show, and we will be back next week.